Welcome to Introduction to Information Technology Lab. In this session, we are going to learn how to use pivot tables. Pivot tables are very powerful tools in Excel, and you can use them to summarize your data, perform computations, analyze your data to identify trends and patterns within your data. Now to the task before us. This workbook contains the daily closing prices of stocks across several months. We are asked to use the data to create an interactive report with a chart showing the average closing prices by weekday. Okay, let's look at the data. We have been given dates, closing prices, but we haven't been given weekdays. When you look at the tax, we are required to create interactive report showing average closing prices by weekday. So we are required to what? To provide the average closing prices and the weekdays. So let's go to our data and start by providing the weekdays, because we will need the weekdays in our chart, so we have to get it somehow. All right, so I'm going to create a new column here called weekday. All right, that is weekday. And then I'm going to pick the format here. So let's go to the home tab, pick the format, and then we'll apply the format. So now we have our weekday column, and we have to generate the weekday. The old-fashioned method will be to pull out your calendar and begin looking at the dates, and then providing the days of the week manually. But Excel makes life easy. Excel has gotten some inbuilt function that we can rely on to generate this week um, days in a short amount of time. So let's call the Excel weekday function. Normally in Excel, you start your functions with an equal sign. So let's bring the equal sign, then we'll call the name of the function, which is weekday. Normally before you finish entering the name of the function, they'll give you a list of possible functions, and mostly you'll find the function you are looking for there. So you can see that on the list we have weekday on top. So I'm simply going to double click to pick it, or you press the tab key to pick it. If you press the enter key, you get an error. The enter key wouldn't pick it for us. Yeah, so normally the one that is highlighted is in blue. Yeah, so if the weekday was not in blue, you have to select it with your mouse, make sure it is in blue before you hit your tab key or you double click to pick it. All right, so once you pick the appropriate formula or function, it comes with parentheses, and inside the parentheses you have to provide what we call arguments or parameters. Okay, so the parameters we have there are the serial number and the return type. The serial number here is the cell address. So the cell in question, that is A2, we have to provide it there. You can either type it manually, or you simply hit the cell to pick the address. All right, then the next thing in the formula is to provide a comma. So provide a little comma. And then we also have to provide the return type. So the return type is the value that will be returned to you, or will be provided after executing the function. Okay, so when you look at Excel, the default is from Sunday to Saturday, with 7 days, yeah, in between them, or with 7 days from Sunday to Saturday. Yeah, we have other week patterns there, Monday to Sunday, which is also 7 days. Yeah, so if you want to go for the first pattern here, you simply hit the letter 1, or the number 1, sorry. You enter the number 1, or you just hit your tab key once it is selected. Normally the selected one is in blue. Okay, all right, so once it is in the return type of your choice, hit the tab key, and it's yeah, enters it for you. So let's close the parentheses now. We are done with our formula, and then we'll hit the tab key again to um, have our weekday. But the issue here is that the weekday is in number instead of what text. We want it in text form. That is simple. You have to what select the cell in question, go to your home tab, go to the number category of your ribbon, and then you click on the drop down, go to more number formats, wait for the dialog to appear, then you look for custom, which is at the bottom. So we want to customize the format. So yeah, once you pick custom, let's change the type. The type is general, but we are going to change it to D. Okay, so if you enter the first D, you have what the number still there. You enter a second D, you have what yeah, 0 and the number, and then third D you have what text, that is Tuesday in short, and then you add the fourth D, you have what your Tuesday or your weekday in full. The reason is that in Excel, the date format is usually what D's, M, and Y. So you can see the date format right here. Yeah, so these are date formats. So if you are using D, it means you are referring to the day of the week, because D in Excel date format represents or indicates what the day of the week. M represents the month of the week, and the Y represent the month of the year. So if we were putting M here, it will be giving us the month, so that is January. And then if we were putting Y here, it will be giving us the year. Okay, all right, so we are interested in the day of the week, so we go for D. Let's hit OK. All right, so now we have our day of the week, and then we want to apply it to the rest of the cells, because it will be waste of time to try to do that for all the individual cells. Let's say you have 1,000 data items. You can't have the time to sit down and create a formula for all the cells. So what you do is that you simply place the cursor at the lower right hand corner of the cell, and then click and drag it down to the very end of your column. Yeah, that is for the cells that have data. Then the formula will be applied. Or easily you can simply once you have this black plus sign here, simply double click and it will apply it to the end. So that is the easiest one. Okay, so you can see that our weekday function has been applied to the rest of the cells, but we are having some issues because not all our weekdays are showing. Yes, some are in hashes, which shows that there is insufficient space for them to display fully. Yeah, so they are represented with some hash signs there. Okay, we can fix that by simply placing our cursor, yeah, at the edge of the column, just between the letter headings, and then we'll double click, and then it will readjust the content to suit, readjust the cells to suit the content. Yeah. So once that is done, I don't like the alignment I'm seeing because it is right aligned. I think left alignment will be better. Yeah, so I'll go to my home tab and then go to alignment section and then click left align, and it's left aligned. Also, the closing prices are also yeah, right align. I want it left align as well, so let me go to my home tab and I'll left align it. So now I have all my data that is properly aligned, except the date I can align them properly as well. Yeah, so instead of aligning them one by one, I could highlight all of them and then align them to the left. Okay, so now everything is left aligned. I also like to to put some borders, yeah, on my table. So I'll go to the home tab, look for the font section and go for all borders. All right, so now there are also borders in my table. So you can see that the table is pretty outstanding now. So let's make the table an official Excel table at this point. Okay, the reason why we want to make it an official Excel table is that in future, if you are updating your table or you are entering new data, it will automatically pick the data and it will reflect in whatever charts or tables you've created out of this particular data. So make sure you are just somewhere on the table, and then you can use Control T, or you can go to yeah, you can go to Insert and then look for table category of the ribbon and then select table. So that will bring you a dialog with a range of your entire table. So you can see that there is a ring around the data indicating that that is the table we are about to create. So if you have headers, make sure that this particular checkbox is checked. By default it will be checked, but in case yours is not checked, you make sure you check it. So let's hit OK, and then we have our official Excel table. But by then you can see that there is somewhat style on the table. I don't particularly like the style, so I'm going to highlight my entire table. Make sure your table is highlighted, and then you go to table design and go to table styles. Let's click on the drop down, and we can either select any of these styles if you find them appropriate or you find them okay for you, or you can just clear the style they've given you. So I've cleared the style. All right, so let's go ahead and create our pivot tables, because our aim is to create a pivot chart, but to create a pivot chart we have to create a pivot table. Okay, yeah, so like I said earlier on, pivot tables allow you to summarize your data. So we have to summarize this data we've been given. It's a lot of data. Let's summarize it, then we can go ahead to create um, pivot charts from this table. Okay, so let's stay somewhere in the table. Okay, we can name our table too. I think it's a good practice to name your table. So let's go to table design. Our table is already called table 3, so we can call it prices or closing prices. Okay, so I can just make it C prices, that is closing prices. Okay, so now my table has a name, and then we are to create pivot table. So make sure you are within your table itself, and then you go to design, table design, look for summarize with pivot tables. Okay, you can go to summarize with pivot tables, or you can also go to insert, and then we can go to pivot tables or recommended pivot tables. Let's use recommended pivot tables. Okay, so let's hit OK. All right, so it takes us to a new sheet where we can create our pivot table, and the layout of the pivot table has been given. We have the pivot table fields here, and yeah, so the pivot table fields are right here. And to create a pivot tables, we need the weekdays and the average closing price. But here we only have weekday. Let's start with the weekday. Okay, you are going to click to select it here, so you can see our weekday has yeah, appeared. Yeah, so that is going to be in the in a column. So now let's go to the yeah, so we don't have anything in the columns yet. So the columns are yeah, so this will be the rows. So let's go to the rows column. So you can see that after checking your weekday, it appears in the rows. So we have the rows that are the horizontal lines and the columns are the vertical ones. Okay, so our weekdays are actually rows and not columns. Okay, let me uncheck the weekday, then it is gone. Yeah, so once you check it, automatically it is assumed that it should be in the what, the rows. But if you don't want it in the row, you can pick it to the column. So assuming I want to take it to the column, I can just drag it there and now we'll have it in the column. But I don't think, I mean, having it in the column looks so nice. Yeah, so Excel, based on its own intelligence, thinks that, I mean, the presenting it in a what, in a row format will look presentable. I agree with them. Yeah, but if you don't like that style, you can have it in columns and that is fine. So let me bring it to the rows. Then the other yeah, the other item we want in our pivot table and eventually our pivot chart is the average closing prices. But we don't have it yet. Let's go with closing price and later on we'll add the average closing price. So now we have what, our weekdays, and then we have our average closing prices. So sorry, we have sum of closing prices. And let's go to what, the pivot table fields here. We can find the values section. So you can see that the sum of closing prices appears in the values section. We can what, click on the drop down and then go to value field setting, and then we can change it to averages. We are having the sum now. Let's pick averages and we'll hit what, okay. But even before hitting okay, we can format it straight away. Once you hit the number format, we can go to number. We want the decimal places to be consistent, so by default it is 2. If you don't want a decimal place, you can take off the decimal places or you can add more. Yeah, so let's leave it to the default, which is 2, and we hit OK, and then let's hit OK. So now we have our weekdays and our average closing prices, and this is what we call a pivot table. All right, the next thing we want to do is to what, create our chart. Okay, so let's go to pivot table analyze, and then we are looking for pivot charts. Let's go to pivot table analyze, and then let's go to pivot charts. Okay, so you have a number of chart options, the line charts, column charts, which is the default, pie charts, bar charts. Okay, you have all these chart options. I'm going to stick to the default, which is the column chart. All right, so we can hit OK, and then we have our chart. This is the chart we have. Now, the next thing we can do is to what, beautify our charts. I mean, it's not looking great in its current form, so we can what, fine tune the chart and make it yeah, more presentable. Okay. So let me start by eliminating the items we don't need. So I'm going to delete the y-axis, and then I don't want these buttons here as well, so we have to go to analyze, pivot chart analyze, and then we look for the show and hide section. So click what, full button. Yeah, the moment you click it, I mean, it will hide it for you. All right, so once that is done, we can what, continue with the fine-tuning of our charts. All right, I'm going to also what, add a title, so I'll pick the title from here. Okay, I'm just going to double click and pick it up, and then I'm going to paste it here. All right. All right, so now we have our charts. That is what, average closing price chart. Let's get rid of the total here. We don't need that. Okay. Now let's get to the chart itself. I'm going to what, create an area for it. So I'm highlighting the cells around it. Yeah, let me add more cells. Okay, so sometimes I'm having issues with my mouse. Okay, let me. I think this will be enough for our chart, and the slicer will be added to the chart. All right, so I'm going to add a color there, background color. So let's go for one of the gray colors. I like the gray colors. I mean, they make your report look beautiful. Okay, so let's get to our chart. Let's get rid of these lines. Yeah, so you just have to click on the lines till you are able to select them, and they will give you what the tools to format them. So at the moment the line is automatic. Let's change it to what no line at all. The lines are gone. Okay, then let's also get rid of the borders. Let's get rid of the borders. So I'll say under the border, I'll pick no line, and the border is gone. And then in terms of the fill, I want to say no fill, so that I mean it can pick the background color. All right, so that is also done. Yeah, so let's also take let's see now. All right, so let me also change the background here. So usually in your plot or the chart there are there are two areas. This is the inner plot area and the outer plot area. So you have to remove the background for both of them. Okay, so let's start with the larger chart or the larger area, and then we'll go to the fill. We are saying no fill, and then the borders we are saying no line. Okay, then you see that your chart sitting perfectly onto your background. All right, so the next thing we want to do is to also we also want to add the numbers or the values to the bar chart. Let's add some values to the bar chart. Okay, so we can go to design, and then we can pick one of these formats, but it means we have to take off the background again. So I'll double click on the plot area. Yeah, and then we'll come to fill. We'll say no fill, and then we get rid of the background. And the border lines, we also take them off, so no border lines. All right, so now we have our chart looking much better, but I don't like the color. Let me go for the orange color. So I'll go to fill, and then the color here I'll change it to this orange color. All right, so we have the orange color now. Okay, so now this is our chart looking so presentable, and even the writings are in gray. I want to change the color of the writings as well. So you can go to what okay, so for that one you can even go to what the home tab. Go to the home tab, and then you change the text color. So we have what the text color options here. So let me go for a white color. Oh, that is not looking great. Black color. Okay, black color is okay. All right, because they were in gray color and they were looking a little bit faint for my liking. So now yeah, we are almost there. The last thing we want to do is to add our slicer. Okay, so let's make sure you are on the chart, and then you can look for pivot chart, analyze, and then you go to the filter option, and then you pick a slicer, insert slicer. Okay, so insert slicer, the options we have is date, closing, price, and then weekday. We don't, none of this will give us a good slicer. I want the slicer to be by month, okay, so that when you pick the month, then it will show you what the average closing prices based on the days of the week. Okay, so we can do that by let's go to the pivot chart field option, and then we'll click on what the dates. Yeah, once you do that, it will add a lot of what fields, that is the date and month, to, yeah, it will add it to what yeah, what the axis, right? Yeah, once that is done, we can bring the date out. So let's just drag it and pull it out, and then we can bring the month out. But after doing that, you realize that in our, yeah, so after doing this, you realize that in our slicer, we'll have the option for the month now. Okay. All right. So that didn't pick well. Let me drag it in. And that is it. So we are back to what our chart. It's not distorted. And then let's insert our slicer once more. So I'll go to pivot chart, analyze, insert slicer. And now you have the month option there. So let's pick the month and hit OK. All right, so now we have our slicer here. Let me bring it to this part. Yeah, and then we can what format our slicer as well. So the slicer is in at the moment is just one column. I want 3 columns, so you can increase the number of columns in your slicer. Okay, so now I have 3 columns. Yeah, but the slicer also contains um, a lot of months. Some are not even having data, so I want to hide all what items on the slicer that are not hiding data, that are not having data. Let's go to slicer settings. Okay, and then we'll simply what check this box, hide items with no data. I'll hit OK, and then we have what fewer options there. All right, so let's add some style to our slicer. The moment you go to slicer, then you have what the slicer styles. You can pick one of these styles, and then yeah, you can format, or you can pick one of these styles. Yeah. Okay, so but I want to get rid of the slicer background. Okay, so what we can do is that you can duplicate it. So you right click and duplicate. Okay, so once you duplicate, that is what price slicer for. So you should take note of what the name of the slicer, because later on you'll be looking for it. All right, so price slicer for, let's format it. I want the background, so let's go to the fill. Yeah, so at the moment there is no color, so I want it to be gray. So let's hit OK, and then you can also check this. All right, we don't need that. All right, let's hit OK, and then we can what, you can either set it as default, but let's hit OK. So now it's not what effective yet. You have to apply it. So let's go to what our slicer, and then we'll look for what price slicer for what we just created now. This is it. Let's hit OK, and then our slicer is what yeah, added to our. So now we have what created a slicer, and then our chart is interactive. So you can see once you select the month, it shows you the average closing prices by weekdays for each of these months, and then you can move from one month to month, and you can compare and actually what identify trends and patterns within your data. So this is the end of our first session. You should take your time and follow, practice, so that the next time we'll meet in, we'll be able to what yeah, resolve any issues that you may be facing with this report. Okay, so see you in our next session.